Well, you know what today is? Any Giants fans? I see Jets gear. Today is Super Bowl, and it's the day where everybody gets to shout and cheer. But can you imagine if you actually had to go to dinner? Okay, just what if on this day was your anniversary? Just kind of felt that way, and your wife. Okay, I'm speaking more to guys here, and your wife said, we have to have our anniversary dinner. What would you do? Would you forego following the game, or would you actually really kind of try to do both, right? Well, here's a little setup, and it's not saying this is it, but this is my way of introducing the little video that I have for us. It's an AT&T commercial, actually.
It's so nice to spend time just you and me.
I know. This is great.
I feel like... Did you just check the game on your phone?
What? No. What am I, like some kind of summoner who can just summon footage to his phone like that? Come on.
I guess I'm just a little oversensitive. It's just that you and
Yes.
Only AT&T's network lets your iPhone download 3 times faster. AT&T.
I'm not saying that you should get AT&T, but that look on his face was just classic. Like total innocence. Well, what was his great sin in this situation? He wanted more. He was not satisfied with having a dinner with his beautiful wife. He wanted more. He wanted to squeeze in footage and live with that complexity. And this adds a thread of complexity to his relationship that obviously he probably didn't bargain for. But that's in many ways how we end up even reminding ourselves that we can do. We can summon footage to our phone. We can add more to our life. That if we don't feel satisfied or discontent with where we are, the whole goal is to squeeze more into our day, squeeze more into our grab more and order more and have more. That the idea of simplicity is very countercultural to many ways. When was the last somebody said, "Boy, you're just really simple, aren't you?" Did you like that? What were they saying? Man, you're just really simple. It means either you're a moron or you don't have much, do you? You're not very sophisticated. Especially in an urban setting, we have this drive to be more complex, to have more, to be more, and to do more. But in many ways, the scriptures do remind us that life doesn't follow the worldly culture. Life in God many times goes against, very countercultural to the expectations and the assumptions of the world. The world basically will say, the more you have, the more you can pack in. You can have a relationship with your wife and have dinner with him, and you can watch the game at the same time. And God will say, no, we weren't built that way. In fact, real joy, real freedom, real passion comes when you actually simplify. That simplicity is not just a discipline that these great monks have or so on and so forth. It is the inheritance for every person who is really in the kingdom. All the more in a season of crisis, in a season when things are shifting, when things get more complex, we're going to find that simplicity, having this gift of simplicity, and I'll explain a little what I mean by simplicity, is going to be so valuable. People are going to be caught up, so confused and already kind of vested in so many different places. They're not going to be able to navigate the many sweeping changes that are coming in our culture and even in the way that God's working in this season of time. So we're following up through a message. Can we go back to, actually I'll do that. We're following up on a message called Simplicity, and it's the second in the series called Mobile, that God does at certain seasons of time put his people on a track where they're not settled. They don't have the expectation of the regular seasons. In fact, the only thing they can do is really walk with God one step at a time. You know the story where coming out of Egypt, they had cried out for freedom. God heard their cry, moved with a mighty arm, and he did 10 amazing plagues, and he split the Red Sea, and destroyed Pharaoh's armies, his horses and his chariots. But what does he do? He doesn't plant them right away in security. He trains them in the wilderness. He trains them. He draws them close through their very calling to be mobile. It's in the season of mobility that they really learn to hear his voice, or they're called to at least, to follow him step by step. Know that their success is not going to be determined by their own resources, but by the God who leads them. I feel like, as we described in this past week, this is the season that we're in for a lot of reasons. So many things are shifting and changing, and our venue shift is kind of a physical representation that we are being called to a life of mobility, spiritual mobility with God. And if that's the case, one of the things that we're going to need in our tool belt, one of the things that we're really going to need to know how to live and practice is this discipline, this joy of simplicity. That when our hearts are cluttered, when our kind of desires and our engagements are just cram-packed, we will not be able to respond to God when he says, come here, do this. Leave this behind because I'm going to give you this instead. So we're going to talk a little about the joy of simplicity and some practical things that we can do. That simplicity is both an inward reality, there's an inner simplicity, and an outward practice that both have to be engaged. But as we do, we'll enjoy the freedom to really be in the moment and to be really with God. Let's read this passage together. And this is Philippians chapter 4, 11 through 13. All right? It goes like this. I am not saying that this because I am in need, for I have learned to be content, whatever the circumstances. I know what it is to be in need, and I know what it is to have plenty. I have learned the secret of being content in every situation, whether well fed or hungry, whether living in plenty or in want. I can do everything through him who gives me strength. This is Paul speaking to the church in Philippi in a section where he is giving thanks to them because they supplied his physical needs for him to be able to live and do ministry. And in the midst of this, I think he's blessing them, saying, and he's not saying, I don't need your money. In fact, he's saying, I'm so thankful for what you've brought, but as a way of modeling to them, don't you know that I've learned something? And I think he's saying he wants them to know and live this as well. He's learned this incredible secret, the secret of being content. That the circumstances do not rule him. When he has lots or when he has little, those circumstances don't drive him. Instead, there's a contentedness that has roosted and ruled in his heart where he can be and do whatever he needs to be and do, whether he has a lot or whether he has a little. And I've meditated on this. What is it? How did he learn this, and what does it mean? What is the secret of contentedness? I'm going to make the connection here. Contentedness means, in many ways to me, as I'm looking at this, the fruit, the effect of when a heart has been trained in simplicity. He says, I know what it's like to not have much. And in his not having much, he's not anxious, he's not freaking out. Because why? He has an anchor from which he's able to do what he's supposed to do. I know what it is to have a lot and have completely the resources I need. And yet, that doesn't make him stagnant, right? Because he's not only content, but there's an inner compass that enables him to really be and do what he wants to do. And I think that he tries to point to that, saying, I can do everything through him who gives me strength. This is the secret. When a heart is simply connected to the one who is the source of strength and hope, when the heart and the life and the thinking and the lifestyle, the mindset and the lifestyle are aligned to the one who gives hope and gives strength, no matter what the circumstances, whether you have little or you have more than you can handle, there's a simplicity of heart to be what you're supposed to be and do what you're supposed to do. I think this is what he's describing here. It's this connectedness with the source, connectedness and alignment with God. That his lifestyle doesn't change whether he has a lot or little, but that his following a procedure and a practice of simplicity all the way through. The fruit is contentment. He's not wanting to cram more in because he already is content. His heart is simple. So I want to talk a little about what simplicity is, and even the dictionary can help us a little. This is from Merriam-Webster. So thank you, Mr. Merriam. Thank you, Mr. Webster. Here it goes. Definition of simplicity is that it's a state of being simple, uncomplicated, uncompounded, okay? You don't have 10 things going on. You're not thinking 5 different thoughts going in different directions. You are focused and simple. There's not 15 different layers that are working against each other. Okay? 2, a lack of subtlety or penetration. Or 3, a freedom from pretense or guile. You are who you are. There's not a difference between what you present yourself to be. Your words say what they mean to say. There is an integrity about what you say and what you do. There is a simplicity. That's what this basic, secular description of simplicity is, directness of expression. And in many ways, this also falls in line with a very biblical understanding of what simplicity is. To actually have your heart belonging to God, and then all of the rest of your life organized just like that. To have your speech even oriented in such a way that what you say is not complicated, there's no guile in it. Okay? It's not all contingent on all these different things. It's not all eloquence and puff. But it's simple, direct, and true. That in fact, guys, you know where that comes from the scriptures? Matthew 5:27. Actually, I didn't put it up. Jesus says, let your yeses be yeses and your noes be noes. Without all kinds of legal qualifications. That's a lifestyle of speech. That's a lifestyle of thinking and approaching relationships. That echoes simplicity. Simplicity. You see in other places where you see a guy who's very learned, very sophisticated in the realm of Jewish law. He's a leader of a synagogue, and he comes to Jesus and says, Rabbi, what must I do to have eternal life? And Jesus looks at him and he says, his heart is kind of, you can get a sense with love. He says, have you followed all of these commandments? And he says, yes, I have. I've loved my neighbor. I've honored my mother and father. I've done all of these things. Okay? And Jesus says, good. Then it's really simple. All you got to do is one thing. Give up all you have to the poor and follow me. But his heart was so complicated that he couldn't do that one simple thing. He is unfreed. He is chained. Now we get a sense that he went away sad because he didn't have that simplicity of heart. Remember, this is the description. What must I do to have eternal life? And Jesus said, do this and you have it. But he couldn't do that. His heart was not simple. And so we see that Jesus lives this way, calls people to live this way, oriented toward the kingdom, free to do and respond to God in every shape and form, having the margin to do so because their heart is unfettered. That's a description I would want to give about what simplicity is. It is an inner reality. It is an inner state that is echoed and, I think in many ways, encouraged and empowered by how you live. You cannot have an inner simplicity for long if your outer life is cluttered. Okay? God, I just want to follow you and so on and so forth, but you've got like 10 million things to take care of. Right? It's very hard. I want to live a simple life, but you've got like 15 cars and 15 properties. It's very hard. Sooner or later, your heart will yield to your outdoor circumstances. And if you say, I'm going to fix my life, I'm just going to go for just sheer simplicity, I'm going to be like a monk and get rid of stuff. And people do this all the time, spring cleaning. I don't need 15 pairs of jeans, I'm going to get rid of them. But if your heart, your inner heart is not simple, guess what? After a while, you're not happy with the 1 or 2 pairs of jeans. You'll go shopping. Isn't that true? So there needs to be, and that's what the simplicity is. It's an inner reality that's being fed by living it out. And the outer reality of living simply actually is not a function of the inside, but they're working in a positive feedback loop. That's my scientific language. One helps the other. One helps the other. A call and desire of inner simplicity, as you follow it through in your outer life, it keeps you on task, and it keeps you aligned, gives you margin to follow after God. So here's a description. Real quick. Some people think simplicity is really stupid, right? It's really lame and boring. Okay, I'm using simple words, right? But the artists know this. There is a sublime quality to simplicity. And this is Leonardo da Vinci. He says, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Okay? Isn't it Einstein who was the one who actually described some of the most complex. I mean, I took quantum physics. I was lost. But he whittles down his, special theory of relativity to what? E equals mc squared. How simple is that? Yeah. The geniuses see the utter truths in not a oversimplified, but in an elegant simplicity. The artists see this. The photographers see this. Okay, I'm trying to take pictures and I'm really visually handicapped. I just don't do very well. But I can tell the difference between a really beautiful picture, one that's been framed well, so that every piece leads you to what the photographer wants you to see. To an amateur photographer who you look at the picture and it's like a visual vomit. There's all kinds of junk everywhere and you don't know what it means. That's how it's supposed to work. God is an incredible artist, and he would have us live in this, arrangement where everything leads to this beautiful simplicity. And that's the ultimate sophistication. Well, many times, if we look at our lives, it does look like vomit. I look at my schedule sometimes, I look at my heart sometimes, I'm like, everything going in different directions. Here is a quote from Kristen Hadley Snyder, and she quotes, she says, as a way of kind of reflecting, do we really need to help in this gaining inner and outer simplicity? If our time, money, and energy are consumed in selecting, acquiring, maintaining, cleaning, moving, improving, replacing, dusting, storing, using, showing off, and talking about our possessions, then there is little time, money, and energy left for other pursuits, such as the work we do to further the community of God. Does that make sense? It does, doesn't it? If you're consumed with your outer life, even just time-wise, your commitments and your energy and your passions and desires, you are not free. There's no margin to really do the important work sometimes. Sometimes we overcommit ourselves, and our real commitments, our godly commitments that God is giving us, get impinged. They get overshadowed. That guy was supposed to have a dinner with his wife, but instead he has other commitments. Maybe his fantasy football commitments. He has to make sure that his team is doing well. And so guess what? His time with his wife is getting overpinged. And there's something insidious in our culture that says that commitments are ugly because they rob us of freedom. And in this way, the scriptures are very clear, I believe, that it's the exact opposite. It is in the surrender to the commitment, to the right commitments, the good ones, that we really become free to enjoy and to live as we're supposed to live. That if we have so many things that we can do at any point in time, we actually lose that joy and we lose the gifts that come in commitment. And so, I'll go to this. It actually is true that there's a relationship between simplicity and commitment. A surrender to godly commitment actually frees us from wandering and distraction. I experience this sometimes on a weekly basis. Because we had a pastoral search, I get emails from all of these, churchstaffingorg.com, pastorfinder.com, and they have these titles. They rate these titles like 5 hottest, pastoral. I didn't know that pastoral positions were hot. 5 hottest pastoral positions in the United States, and they, it's in red, and sometimes you click it open and so on and so forth. It's kind of interesting, but I really don't open up those emails because you know why? It's a waste of time because they are going to craft it to be so incredibly enticing. And honestly, my heart, if I give room to that and I say, hey, it actually robs me of energy. So I'm very thankful that I don't have this need to open up that email. Okay, those many emails, I can just delete. In fact, because we found a pastor, I don't think we're going to do that anymore. I don't have to follow through on that because my heart doesn't need to wander and I'm free. Does that see how it works? I'm so free. I'm walking down the street, and if I see a really beautiful woman, I don't have to really sit there and engage with, wow, what would it take for me to really get her? Why? Because I have a beautiful woman, and I am so thankful. I don't have to waste 1 ounce of energy of my mind, of my heart, and pursuits in that way. Okay? I don't have to sit there and say, how am I going to find somebody? No. Okay? This is the power of commitment. Okay? You have a place where God has you in, and you can pour yourself in that place. Simplicity works that way. When you say, Lord, this is what you would have me do, I can pour myself in. Don't worry about the what ifs and all the other things that other people are doing. And you are freed to really enjoy the moment with God, enjoy the adventure He has with you, instead of wandering in distraction. So I want to give you 10 practices. This is from Richard Foster and a book that I really commend to you. It's called Freedom and Simplicity. It was written a long time ago in the 80s, right? But it's still very, very true. And it's called Freedom and Simplicity. And there's 10, I've kind of whittled them down a bit, 10 practices that help you in this inner and outward spirituality of simplicity. Number 1, reject anything that produces an addiction in you. I put that number 1 because I have a very addictive personality. Like something can catch my thoughts and I'm like, I got to follow it through to the nth degree, you know? And I have to really guard my heart and even my body sometimes. Because I find that this is true. The more stressful, the more complex things get, I run to something to cope. Are you like that? Okay. If things are simple already as it is, it's not so bad. But when things get really, really messy, I got to run to something, okay, to cope. And it easily becomes an addictive thing. Yeah. And this is a reminder that's saying that the place of freedom and joy is when you're feeling this and you're feeling like this tendency, desire to get addicted to something, okay? It could be Korean videos, okay? Right? Well, it means you are realizing, hey, this is where something has to work in my heart to find simplicity in my relationship with God, and to get to that place. These are a sign that there's active work of duplicity, active work of complexity that's not supposed to be there. Number 2, buy things, this is very practical, for their usefulness, not for their status. Okay, this is really tough. Because in a Korean American, Asian American setting, status is king. So you look at these parking lots and you see all these nice, fine German engineered cars. They're not our church as much, right? But you see it in a lot of places. Overrepresented, right? It's because what you have speaks to who you are in these cultures. And I have to say this, I bemoan this actually. I feel like it puts us into a trap. Some of our young families feel this incredible pressure to have this grand party for, like, you know, the 30th, 100th day or the first year. And it's tradition, and parents want it. So I'm not trying to, you know, speak blame or judge or something. It's the system that makes us want to say, hey, this party was bigger and grander than that other party. And it's all for what? Yeah, it's not for the child. The child will barely remember, okay? It's for our sense of holding up status. And we can follow through on that to the place where we're caught in an ugly cycle. I really challenge young parents. I'll back you up. Don't have a huge party. Have a party in your home. Make it really simple. Really focus creatively on what God is doing in this child. Don't have this lavish meal that's going to put you in debt. Okay? It's counterproductive. Okay? We need to work on what is useful, not status-oriented. Now, doesn't mean that you can't have a party, but celebrate in such a way that don't follow just status. We want to free you, okay? If I can, I want to set the culture in such a way where that's not how we live. We don't have to live that way. That we can find joy and freedom, and not in the accoutrements, in the clothing of the world. So, next time you want to buy something and your choice is, well, my friends will think I'm cool because of this or not. Okay, work in the opposite spirit. Go functional, go useful, and see how that begins to give you muscles for simplicity. Number 3, develop a habit of giving things away. This one's fun. I'll share you the story of when I was coming out of seminary, and knowledge was so important to me. In fact, these days I can't remember a lot of scholars' names, but at the time, I don't know why, I had this library in my head of all the books I wanted to own. I had to own them. I had to put them in my library. I started off with a plan as a poor seminarian, actually, to own a library of 10,000 books. And it was a good intention. You know, I wanted to be a very learned person. I still do. And I got to about 2,000 books, by the way. But then my kids, the money went into diapers, not into books. And I was very frugal about it. I always found the used book and so on and so forth. But somewhere along the line, I realized God was saying, you don't want this book for learning, you want it for owning. And you know how I knew? Somebody would ask me, hey, do you have a book that would really speak to this? I'm really interested. And it would be a very important book that I have, and I would, just because I'm Christian, right? I would say, okay, but I would make them write a covenant, I will return this book, right? And I would tell them a story. Books are like children, right? But then they wouldn't give him the book back. I know one guy took 3 of my precious books. Okay, I gotta forgive him. But he moved away. I can't find him. And I'm like, those books. God was whittling down my library until I got to the place of, oh, that's what you're trying to do. These books are not mine. I can give them away. So if you owe me books, you can keep them, right? Bless you. Give them away. Give them away. We can get to a place where these things don't own us. And it's not easy. Okay, if a pastor can get a trap in books, you can get a trap in other kinds of things. It's very easy to think that these are good things, but actually a heart of simplicity is always going to be so much more joyous and freedom. Okay, I spend less time keeping up my library. I enjoy them, but I have time and energy for other things. 4, refuse to be manipulated by the sellers of modern gadgetry. And sorry, guys, this is us. This is us. Okay, we got to have the new thing. Okay, so Android 4 comes out, we got to have it. Android 5, guess what? Somebody's got to grab it. Your iPhone, 4 is great, but you have to have Siri. You just have to have it. Apple has done such an incredible job of hooking us. We just have to have it. The iPad, the next generation is coming out. How many people with the second generation of iPad is going to get the third one? Just because. We can't help it, but that's actually a very culture that we want to break and move away from. Lastly, learn to enjoy. Not lastly. There's 10 of them, by the way. Number 5. Learn to enjoy things without owning them. Okay. I like the fact that when we travel, we don't travel much. We use Hotwire, and we try to get 4-star. Because they're really cheap, 4-star rooms. And it's kind of funny. We go to this place. It's so much nicer than what we normally live in, right? And we have a great time, and then we can say goodbye to them. We come back to our normal home, okay? We can rent a nice car and come back to them, okay? We're very frugal and budget-oriented, but it's like a reminder that we don't have to have nice things all the time, but, God is not against us having enjoyable experiences. So learn to enjoy things without owning them. 6, develop a deeper appreciation of creation. This is the way you do it. Okay? Go out and learn to really enjoy the world that God has made. Go hiking. Go camping. Okay? We're from the Pacific Northwest, and so this is more close to where we are. But something happens to you. You get reoriented. Instead of the rat race, instead of climbing and getting all these things, you begin to kind of connect with the Creator in a very beautiful way. So anybody wants to go camping, I'll set you up. Right. Number 7, look for a healthy skepticism at all the buy now, pay later schemes. And there are a ton of them. Okay. 8, I'm going to move a little faster. Obey Jesus' instructions about plain, honest speech. Okay, let your yeses be yeses and your noes be noes. Be truthful in the way you come across. 9, reject anything that fosters, feeds the oppression of others. And this is a big one. This is something we don't really think about. The things that we own, the things that we use, the things that we buy, we don't think about because our world is so interconnected, and God cares about the people, the third world, and others. I just came back from a conference in Chicago where it was an ECC conference, a covenant conference, where we were hearing some of this incredible burden for not only the experience of slavery in the past, but what's still going on right now. Did you guys know that right now there are more people incarcerated in our jails, African American males, than there was ever at one time in slavery? We have 5% of our population in the world we represent in North America, but we incarcerate 25% of the world's prisoners. Yeah. Now, I'm linking to this in some sense that there's a whole system of money, okay, that feeds into this. The products that these sometimes prisoners make as well. Then there's a whole idea of a third world that are working for pennies, barely making money to provide the things that we use. This is not a guilt trip. This is a way of saying simplicity actually disentangles us from the very clutches of the world that's all about oppression. You can't have a simple heart and still feed the stokes of oppression day in and day out. And so I just wanted you to, I'm going to lay that on you, okay? Not a guilt trip, but actually investigate, find out, start learning and say, God, open my eyes to what a heart of simplicity, a life of simplicity looks like, and how it impacts others. One last thing about this. Our economists and our ecologists are reminding us we cannot live this lifestyle, this kind of consumer lifestyle, disposable lifestyle forever. It's affecting our world, it's affecting other people. So it's a way of saying, God, help me to live not just responsible, but a simple lifestyle for the sake, voluntarily for others. Lastly, shun anything that distracts you from seeking God's kingdom. So these are reminders, these are general reminders that we're not living in a world where we can just keep living this kind of complicated orientation of life. Even our lifestyle needs to shift. But I also came back, this is a couple of weeks ago, from a little mini conference with John Paul Jackson. I don't know if you know this guy. He's been known in the circles for a long time. He's very credible, and he was actually saying some things that really troubled me. God has been showing him some pictures of where our country is going and where our world is going. And they were very specific and they were very scary. So, at first, before he went on, I thought, if he keeps down this route, I can accuse him of fear-mongering because it made it sound like the world is coming to an end. And in the midst of this, he actually said some things that really struck my heart. And he said, this is where the world will go if the world does not respond to God, turn back to God. But the Christians have a role in this. We get to be the innovators. We get to be the ones who are free during this time of crisis to live not already simply, but to be able to reach out, have the margin to reach out to other people, to influence other people. And in the midst of this, and so I'm going to write a blog article, give you the links where you can see it yourself. I don't have time, it's a very long thing. But he's coming with the sense that we're living in a time where we cannot live the status quo. That simplicity is going to be a matter of even short-term survival. So he focused on he's saying, there's going to be a time when scarce items are going to be in demand. There's going to be times, and he's saying, if things keep going their way, that there's going to be even like 2 weeks of no power because of terrorists and other kinds of things. And he's making sure that we know that it's not guaranteed, but that's what God is showing him as a very strong possibility. But he outlined 4 things that should be in focus given a time like this. And I looked at these 4 things and I realized I don't have to wait for a terrorist bomb, a dirty bomb, or I don't have to wait for some horrible thing to happen for me to focus on a simple lifestyle in regards to these 4 things. In fact, I can do this now. It said focus on real energy. Realize all the energy that we're using, and instead of just, and this is where our driving habits, our electricity usage, shift to a place where there's a simplicity about it, where we don't have, he said, what are you going to do if you don't have your cell phone for 2 weeks, right? Shift your relationships even. Real food. And he actually said in one of his visions that God was giving him that rural property was going to skyrocket in value because they're going to need, our food production system is going to break down. And like I said, this is fear-mongering, kind of, not really, but it's possible, always possible. But we can actually focus, instead of seeing food only as a very complete commodity, to actually being more simple about our eating habits. And as my wife and I, we have a garden. I don't know if you can do that in your apartment, but there are places where we can begin to shift to actually focus on real food. I'll send, there's a PDF that goes along with this. Real money. Okay, not put into all these complex derivatives that nobody can figure out, right? But into things that you can have access to, and to simplify some of that, and real needs. Not living in all for luxuries, but the simple things and making sure that you have them and living by them. So simplicity actually is really significant All the more if he is right, but all the more because our world is so complex and it's hard to follow God. Let's bow our heads. If you would join me in a prayer. Maybe you feel that running through your head and through your mind, consumed with too much to do, dreams of the next things to own, to purchase, to manage. And you find it very hard to hear God's voice, filled with anxiety, whether you have much or whether you have little. I think Paul was talking about this. I've learned a secret of contentment. Not to thumb it in their noses and say, ha ha, I'm spiritual, you're not. But as a way of inviting them, inviting us to this deep contentment that comes when our hearts and our lives are aligned to God. We don't have to have that much more because we have all that, not only we need, but in abundance. So I'm just going to have you respond to where you are. Are there some things that need to be decluttered in your heart? Some goals, some commitments that are not of God, some activities and passions that are shadowing your godly commitments, and you find that you're so strapped thin, you don't have much margin. Would you respond to the call to freedom that God gives you? He would have you living free, full of joy, that you have not just all that you need, but you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing. You don't have to be constantly wandering and distracted at the other opportunities, because you're walking step by step with Him. And if you're in that place, I just want to have you call you to respond to God. I feel like God is saying, now more than ever, He wants to really be close to you. That's the key of getting through this season of mobility. Intimacy, to talk with Him, to be with Him. And then begin to say, anything that gets in the way, let's drop. Take some time to reflect and respond to God, and we'll pray. Hi, this is Pastor Martin from New Vision Community Church. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video. I'd love to have a chance to meet you, as well as I want to invite you to come to worship with us on a Sunday. For more information, go to www.newvisioncommunity.net.